Hello everyone, this is Joshua Smith of Apollo's Artifacts. I thought that I would take a quick look at some of the problems with voting in America considering we are within 1 year of another presidential election. I'm sure everyone has seen videos of the problems that we've had with electronic voting machines.
No.
Take just a quick look at that here.
How would that happen?
I don't know, it's in the machine.
It is not letting me vote for who I want to vote for.
So this has happened in a number of different states, and we've seen many examples of it. In fact, there was a very good book covering many of these issues called Vote Scam by the Colliers. So suffice it to say, I do not trust the electronic voting machines at all. It is my view that all voting should be done purely by paper ballots, and it should all be hand counted, and you should have to present a valid photo identification. We can't go along pretending this is 1832 anymore, but we also can't turn it all over to the computer world. Because one of the common refrains that you'll hear from the left is that, well, there is no such thing as voter fraud doesn't happen, and really the only thing you'll hear them complain about are the electronic voting machines. Well, I agree that those are a problem, but you also have to agree that these voter rolls are a massive problem too. So let's take a quick look at an article here from the Washington Free Beacon. Report 24,000 voter records in Florida County contain errors, potential fraud. Legal group finds hundreds of double voting cases, thousands of deceased voters on rolls in Palm Beach County. And this is the case all across the United States. Every single state has these kinds of problems, which are just ripe for abuse. So the article begins here. An election integrity watchdog has found 24,000 instances of irregularities among the voter rolls in Palm Beach County, Florida, according to a new report. The Public Interest Legal Foundation, or PILF, no, that is not some new sexual fetish, a group that litigates to protect election integrity, discovered double voting by the same registrants, double registrants across state lines, deceased voters on rolls, and apparent non-citizens previously registered to vote in Palm Beach County following a 3-month investigation involving office visits, records inspections, and voter roll audits. And of course, we know that the state of Florida is always wildly controversial. It is a purple state. It's always right on the verge of going red or blue. And like I said, this is of course just one county, a problem in Florida. And Florida has massive problems with this throughout the state. We'll move on over here to a notice put out by Judicial Watch where they've looked into some of the problems in California. California begins massive voter roll cleanup, notifies up to 1.5 million inactive voters as part of Judicial Watch lawsuit settlement. Begins here. Judicial Watch announced today that it has been informed that Los Angeles County has sent notices to as many as 1.5 million inactive voters on its voter rolls. This mailing is a step toward removing the names of voters who have moved, died, or are otherwise ineligible to vote. The massive mailing is the result of a settlement agreement with Judicial Watch requiring the county to remove as many as 1.5 million inactive registrations. In addition, the California Secretary of State has alerted other California counties to clean up their voter registration lists to comply with the federal National Voter Registration Act, as the Secretary promised to do that in the same settlement agreement. Moving down a bit here, it says, as Judicial Watch previously noted, Los Angeles County has over 10 million residents, more than the populations of 41 of the 50 United States. California is America's largest state with almost 40 million residents. The county had allowed more than 20% of its registered voters to become inactive without removing them from the voter list. And I move over here to another article. This is from Real Clear Politics. California begins removing 5 million inactive voters on its rolls. And we find out in this article that it's the first time in 20 years that Los Angeles County has actually bothered to clean up its voter rolls, which means any number of people could have come on and voted illegally in the names of other people. As you move down a bit here, you find out some more surprising things. It says, inactive registrations for the most part occur when voters move to another county or state or pass away but remain on the rolls. The lawsuit alleged that Los Angeles County, with its more than 10 million residents, has more voter registrations than its citizens old enough to register, with a registration rate of 112% of its adult citizen population. And that applied across the state as well. As we see here, the entire state had a registration rate of 101% of age-eligible citizens, the lawsuit said. A bit further down, we find out more information. Months after the election, an extensive investigation by the Los Angeles Times found that the new system was plagued by glitches responsible for upwards of 100,000 inaccurate voter registration records, including wrong party preferences, voters incorrectly voters incorrectly being designated as wanting to vote by mail, and at least 1,500 non-citizens wrongly allowed to register to vote. Another article from Real Clear Politics, Who Will Clean Up America's Voter Rolls? And it cites the problem here of Los Angeles County once again, but it points out here that California is not the only place that has this problem. It says here in the article, 8 states as well as the District of Columbia have total voter registration tallies exceeding 100%, and in total 38 states have counties where voter registration rates exceed 100%. Another state that stands out is Kentucky, where the voter registration rate in 48 of its 120 counties exceeded 100% last year. About 15% of America's counties, where there is reliable voter data, that is, over 400 counties out of 2,800 have voter registration rates over 100%. This echoes a 2012 Pew study that found that 24 million voter registrations in the United States, about 1 out of every 8, are, quote, no longer valid or are significantly inaccurate, a number greater than the current population of Florida or New York State. Pew's total included at least 1.8 million dead people and another 2.75 million Americans who are registered to vote in at least 2 states. In sum, America's voter rolls are a mess, and everyone knows it. While voter registration rates are over 100% are not proof of fraud, they certainly create opportunities that otherwise would not exist, such as voting twice in different precincts, or the potential for requesting and filling out invalid absentee ballots. At a time when both parties are warning of threats to free and fair elections, obeying federal law by updating the voter rolls would seem to be an easy fix. And it goes through here how both sides often accuse each other of creating various pathways to fraud within voting. And this Real Clear Politics article is a very extensive article that covers all the problems. They point out here how there's been almost no federal enforcement of any of the laws related to this. They point out especially that was the case under the Obama Department of Justice. However, many of those same problems have continued under Trump for his Department of Justice as well. And of course, I will link all of these articles below so that you can check them out for yourself. The last one is from the Washington Times, titled, No, Voter Fraud Isn't a Myth, 10 Cases Where It's All Too Real. The article goes on to point out how, in one instance, they found dead people voting in Colorado. As the article points out here, it says, a report in Denver exposed multiple incidents in recent years where dead Coloradans were still voting. A dead World War II veteran named John Grasso voted in 2006 primary election, and a woman named Sarah Sosa, who died in 2009, somehow cast ballots in 2010, 11, 12, and 13. Then her husband died, and then somehow a ballot was also cast in his name as well. Number 2 here, illegals found voting in Virginia, only discovered after they self-reported. Only discovered after they self-reported. And it says here, moreover, the FBI opened an investigation in the state after 20 dead people turned up in applications to vote. 3, some Pennsylvania citizens were voting twice. And it shows here that they discovered more than 700 Pennsylvania voters have cast 2 ballots. And almost 43,000 voters in Pennsylvania had potentially duplicate registrations in either Pennsylvania or other states. 4, illegal voters uncovered in Philadelphia. Half had previously voted. At least 86 non-citizens have been registered voters in Philadelphia since 2013, and almost half of them have cast a ballot in a recent election. As an attorney looking into this said, quote, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Who knows how many are on and don't ask to be taken off. 5, voter rigging triggers probe in Texas. And this is related to mail-in ballots and so-called vote harvesting, where political operatives are filling out voter ballots for other people without their consent or knowledge. 6, Indiana voter fraud investigation grows to 56 counties. And it says here that there could be hundreds of fraudulent voter registration records with different combinations of made-up names and addresses with people's real information. 7, 3 under investigation in Oklahoma for voting twice in presidential primary. 8, election fraud in Kentucky. It says here, a Franklin County grand jury has indicted a Pike County man in June on multiple felony counts of election fraud in connection with last month's statewide primary. Keith Justice, 50, has been charged with 4 counts of intimidating an election officer and 1 count of interfering with an election officer in Pike County. 9, underage voters found voting in Wisconsin's presidential primary. shows here that they discovered 6 cases of underage voters. And in one of those cases, a student actually used a report card as their identification. And 10 voter registration cards sent to illegals in Pennsylvania. In September, the Secretary of State's office in Pennsylvania mailed about 2.5 million voter registration postcards to people who are not registered voters, but are licensed drivers. And again, some of these were only caught because of self-reporting. And it ends here by saying, quote, "There's certainly the potential for hundreds, if not thousands, of foreigners here legally and illegally to be on our voter rolls, and a certain percentage who are casting ballots." So again, I just think this should drive home the point that we should get rid of the electronic voter machines. Everything should be paper ballots, and you should have to present a valid photographic ID in order to vote. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.